Hey friends, before we dive into this week's episode, just a heads up. Our podcast talks about suicide, sexual abuse, and other trauma, and some of what you hear may be triggering, so please listen with care. This is The Survivors, real stories, raw conversations, and the truth about what it means to keep going after the hardest things. We're so glad you're here. Let's keep surviving together.
I just don't even know how we're here at this point. It's been 3 months, 14 episodes, so many hours together in this little teeny tiny box. And here we are at the end of season 3 of The Survivors. And that's our first season together. And I just love you. That's all I have to say.
Oh, thank you. It's been a whirlwind, absolutely, for me, but it's been a blessing, an absolute blessing to do this with you. I've learned so much about you, about myself, and I can't thank you enough for bringing me onto this project with you.
Oh God, that was a no-brainer. Yeah, I mean, the first time you and I even connected, it was just an automatic, how can we not do this? And I was just so happy that you said yes. And now here we are. And it seems like it was just, October, November when we started? I don't even remember. It's been so long. It feels like it's been, I don't know. It feels like we've been connected for an awful lot longer than just a few months,
Yeah.
in all the good ways. So, okay, today is the recap of season 3, and we covered a lot. I feel like we covered a lot of ground. It was an emotional season. I know it was for you. It definitely was for me. I think it was for all the people we've gotten feedback from since we started. We started with our origin story, that how did we meet? How did we get together? And it was, I think, pretty wild how you and I found each other, because we were definitely not looking for each other.
Not in the slightest.
No, not at all. You had even just kind of started in your own life thinking thoughts of maybe someday I would do a podcast, and I was doing this podcast already, and we kind of had a shift in co-hosts, and all of a sudden, one conversation with a mutual friend that you and I have, Joe Massa, who has an amazing podcast and YouTube channel, that got us together. My suicide story, you were a guest and I was a guest, and he kind of shipped us, and here we are. And yeah, and you were willing to just take a massive leap of faith because you had never done this before.
This is totally, absolutely new to me. Just sharing what I did on Joe's podcast was, it's hard for me to go back and watch that episode because it is so incredibly raw and emotional for me, to share those things publicly for the very first time. And then, I did that with Joe, and then you and I started our podcast, and then I appeared on, I don't know, 3 or 4 other podcasts in like 60 days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were out there.
It was just a big old whirlwind. And I honestly, I got wore out. I had to take a beat and say, all right, I need to, because it brings up a lot for me every single time.
And there's a lot that you have in your story. And that was one of the biggest pivots that we made this season, which was not just talking about being a survivor of a suicide loss or a suicide attempt, but you, just because of your story and your background and your experience, brought a whole set of different types of survivor stories to this podcast. I mean, sexual abuse, and you obviously are a survivor of suicide loss, 5 of them, and also a suicide, multiple suicide attempts and domestic violence. And I mean, cult life. It's like the grab bag of survivor stories, and you have a full bag.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is it's like, I could never, I did get one opportunity with another podcast where I was able to share my whole story, and it took 2.5 hours of edited material. It was at 2.5 hours, and it was just too much. You know what I mean? Like, people are asking, when is a book coming out? When is a book coming out? And I'm like, I don't know that I can fit all of this in one book. I don't think that I can do it. I'm not sure. I just feel like it might be a bit much for people to take in. I might have to break it off into sections. I don't know. But, this podcast has given me the opportunity to get my footing, and ground myself and get myself out there and get more comfortable. As I've done more and more interviews and things like that, it gets easier.
Mhm.
Yes. And there's not as much emotion involved, because with practice or anything like that. But, it doesn't mean that it hurts any less. I've just learned to share my story without it gutting me every time.
Yeah, well, there's compartmentalizing that happens. There's dissociation that happens. I mean, you jumped in. We're recapping the season, so let's just jump to right after our origin story, which was episode 1. Episode 2 was your story. I thought it was really, really important to spend time, and we did spend a lot of time talking about where you came from with all of this, and your life as a member of the FLDS polygamy cult, and your uncle is Warren Jeffs, and your family was excommunicated, and you had 19 siblings in your family. Unfortunately, you've lost 5 of them. But I mean, you come from a very, very loaded background.
Mm-hmm.
And you shared that, and that you just dove headfirst into like the super deep end of the pool with both your part 1 of your story, and then episode 3 we just kept rolling, and that was part 2 of your story. And we kind of started at the beginning and worked our way all the way up to now.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I have cousins and my aunts. One aunt has reached out to me, and multiple times she's watched and listened to all the episodes. I think she watches them on YouTube. And when she, first started listening and watching, she just was like, oh my God, I had absolutely no idea that you were dealing with that for so many years. And why didn't you ever say anything? And I had a lot of people ask me, why didn't I say anything? And I said, I don't know. There was the shame behind, attempting suicide myself multiple times. How could I do that after losing 2 brothers in the early 2000s to that? I learned at a very young age to carry the baggage and the trauma alone, and I didn't really feel safe to share with very many people at all. And so, yeah, I've had a number of people that have let me know, that I've friends that I've only known for a few years, and the sweetest comments and text messages, and but the underlying messages is, if Natasha can get through this, what she has experienced, which is some of the worst out there, if she can survive and come out on the other side, then I can do it.
And that's the whole point. That's what I mean. I remember when you and I first talked way back before we ever hit record. That's what you said. If the benefit of my experience can help someone heal, or can help someone find support, or can give someone guidance or just a little bit of hope, like that's the whole point. And you did that. And we rolled straight into episode 4, which was all about you surviving sexual abuse. And it was your brother who was your abuser. And I mean, I just think of each of the things that you've shared about your life, losses or attempts or domestic violence within your family, and what happened with your brother. And it's like, how do you even rank those things in your brain? Like as a listener, like one thing is worse than the other, but they're all so just traumatic and life-changing that you just had a lot. You've had a lot in your life. And the fact that you're here talking about it for the benefit of other people who may be at a different point in their trauma, like that's heroic as far as I'm concerned. So
thank you.
Well, it's the truth. You're welcome, but it's the truth. I mean, that's how I feel. So
Well, again, having carried it for such a long time, and I never certainly have considered myself a quote unquote hero. But I have had comments and messages from people saying that it's humbling. It's incredibly humbling, and I don't take that lightly. Um, I never sought out to have anybody go, look at me, look at me, look at me. It's never been about that. In fact, in some ways, the accolades are hard for me to swallow. It really, um, because we didn't grow up in a world of praise. It was sit down, shut up, and you're going to get what you're given.
Mm-hmm.
And this has provided such an incredible amount of healing for myself. So people come to, they say, "Oh my gosh, you're healing me," and I'm like, it's a two-way street here.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what this podcast has always been.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just cathartic for me to come on and talk about the grief that I have, or the losses that I've had, or dealing with mental illness with my children or my father or my family. It's healing for anybody who gets to see themselves or hear themselves in what we talk about.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in the way that, you losing your dad at such a young age, how that just changed the trajectory of your life. And for so many years you lived with that. And then to find out, 35 years later, that he actually died by suicide, and losing him all over again. That would just, I don't even know.
It's definitely been an experience. It's just nothing you ever expect. I mean, you lose someone and you never expect that you're going to have to lose them and grieve them all over again, and certainly not in the way that I did. But like you, we make choices. And I feel like you and I have made a very intentional choice to get out there and talk about what we've dealt with, and talk about how awful it's been at times and debilitating, and how we've been isolated or depressed, or all the things that you and I have been through because of what we've gone through. And okay, we've made that conscious choice to sit here and talk about it. And we do that because we have a story to share. And in my own experience telling stories now, or at least my own, for so many years, I don't think I've ever found anything that has quite the healing power that storytelling has, and sharing lived experience has, because that's how people see themselves in other people and realize they're not alone. And I'm not the only one who's ever gone through all the things, for instance, that you've gone through or that I've gone through. And well, how did you do it? How did you navigate it? What got you to the other side of all that grief? And that's what we do. And this is not to say anything negative about anyone who chooses not to share. Like, that's your choice. We're just choosing to share as much, like you said before, for everyone else and for ourselves. But this is actually a good moment to recap episode 5, which was about gratitude and grief. Like, you and I together have lost 8 people we love to suicide, just the two of us. So we have had an enormous amount of grief in our life, but we sit here with an incredible amount of gratitude, and we talked about that.
Absolutely. I mean, just talk about being grateful for all the little things, and the time that I spend with my children. I mean, they had a snow day today, and so they didn't go to school. And we played and laughed, and George was in his office trying to work.
Poor George.
And we were hooting and hollering and laughing and having fun while I was taking a break from unpacking. And I mean, it's just those, and for me, I go, I hope that's a core memory for my kids, because that was for me. And I hope they look back and they remember this. But it's when I think about everybody that I've lost and the memories that they didn't get to make with their own children, because 5 of my brothers, of the 5, only one of them had children. And so by living living my life and with my children and George and everything, I'm honoring them. And especially considering that 3 of the 5 died at 28 years old. The other 2 were in their early 40s. And so every day that I am alive is just a way
It's a tribute.
Yeah, to them and to
Yeah.
the life that they didn't get to live to the fullest. Yeah.
I love that. So, all right, that was episode 5. Episode 6, we shifted gears again and we jumped kind of right back into another part of your story, which was domestic abuse and surviving that. And, you were really, really open and honest and raw about what you dealt with at home when you were a kid. And you said it a few minutes ago about how everyone in your family was just expected to, like the Netflix series says, keep sweet, pray, and obey. And if you didn't, I mean, things got physical. And that was your childhood.
Right. There was fights among the moms, there was fights among the siblings, regular beatings from our parents. My dad was really hard on the older kids. He never laid a hand on me. But just the overall abuse that occurred on the regular. And, again, I've had cousins reach out to me and say the same thing happened to us. And we all thought we were so alone in that. And thank you for letting me know that we were not alone, that we were not crazy thinking that getting beat the shit out of almost every day was normal. And, I have cousins that I've never even met that have connected with me on social media to tell me what they experienced. And it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart in so many ways that kind of abuse was occurring in so many different homes within our community.
Yeah, and it's all optics. Nobody wants to talk about it. Everybody has to pretend that they're living this idyllic little life, but everybody's suffering behind closed doors. I mean, it's a really horrible way to live, especially for a child.
The wives are suffering trying to live this bullshit principle in the jealousy and the control that comes with that, and then the children, and it's just a never-ending cycle of it. And I just reached a point where I couldn't do it anymore. I'm so done living in a life where we're not talking about it, because that's the only way I know to change this. Is to talk about it.
That's right. That's right. And the more you give other people permission to talk, the more they talk. And it's a domino effect in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
In a good way. So after that, believe it or not, it was the holidays. And we started talking about holiday expectations. That was episode 7. Talked about, everything having to be magical, and that pressure and that expectation. But what if we don't feel festive? You and I talked a lot about that, because you and I were kind of struggling in different ways with the idea of just kind of lowering the bar because it was too high. Everything had to be just so, and you had to fake it till you make it.
Mm-hmm.
And for what? Just to create the illusion of something festive when nobody's feeling festive. So, I mean, to me, that was an important conversation, because I really resonated with that one.
Yeah. And I know when the kids are younger, you want to make it magical. And so there is that holiday pressure when your kids are on both parents, when the kids are small, and then for me, as the older the kids have gotten, I've gotten more real with them and just been more honest about things. And I just have reached a point in my life where I can no longer pretend. It makes me physically and emotionally unwell if I have to pretend like everything is okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean, and I feel the same way. And again, it's optics. We shouldn't have to live in a world where we're pretending. And I think that was actually, for me, one of the more powerful conversations of this season, because we were all right in the thick of doing that. And that conversation was a good reminder for me to knock that shit off and stop doing it.
Stop it right now.
Stop it right now. So, okay, after that, this episode still blows my mind, episode 8, when you talked in depth about your life in the FLDS polygamy cult and what it was like with all the control and the rules and the expectations. And I think what really stuck out to me in that conversation was how, you kind of alluded to it a minute ago, how normal it felt to everybody who you said was living in that community with you. That it was just normal.
Uh-huh.
Just to, you don't even realize you're surviving something until you're out of it.
Looking for mental health resources that actually fit who you are and where you come from? Then you need to check out the HelpHUB. It's not another generic wellness site. It's a free, inclusive online platform built for real people living real lives. People managing stress, anxiety, depression, trauma and abuse, grief or suicide loss. At the HelpHUB, you'll find the resources, tools, treatment options, and trauma-informed content you need in the moment without having to dig through endless tabs or start from scratch. It's your place to land, to take a breath, and to find exactly what you need when you need it most. Visit thehelphub.co, where the help you need is just a click away.
I didn't even know it was a cult until we were out of it, which we left when I was in 97, when I was 12 years old. I had absolutely, for years, did not even know that it was a cult. And we got out of it before shit got really bad with Warren taking over. Mm-hmm. We got out just in the nick of time. And I'm so very grateful for that. And I think too, the trajectory of my older siblings, I'm smack dab in the middle, number 13 of 20. And the vast majority of my older siblings, one by one, were leaving the church. And I think my dad realized that and he didn't want to lose his children. That was the number one thing about my dad, is he absolutely loved and adored his children. And he knew if he stayed, he would lose the vast majority of his children. And he wasn't willing to let us go. And I thank my parents very much for having the courage to step away from a life that was generational, that was all that they knew, all sense of community. That was our family, that was our cousins, that was everything that we had, to nothing.
Yeah.
And having to build our lives from the ground up.
Yeah, that was a watershed moment for your family, where everything changed, where they just cut loose of everything, like you said, that was not just what your family knew, but it was this generational pattern. And, you're living inside this bubble. So no one really understands. Certainly none of your siblings understood the reality of what you were living in. So, like you said, thankfully your parents got out when they did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So then after that conversation, it was thinking about the holidays in a different way. You and I didn't want to just have the same conversation about holiday expectations. We wanted to talk about it from the financial point of view, because we each have 2 kids, and we know what prepping for holidays, celebrating holidays, buying gifts for holiday, like all of that financial stress is so unbelievably heavy, and it's so real. But we talked about it all. We talked about like the guilt, the debt, that pressure to make sure, all the gifts are either under the tree or in the house. And I think for me, it felt kind of freeing just to kind of call it out and be like, that's bullshit that we have to make ourselves poor just to satisfy some expectation of what a holiday should be.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, and the kids, in the long run, do they remember the gifts?
No,
they don't. It's the experiences of it, and making a damn mess on Christmas Eve making sugar cookies, you know, because I don't know why they want to make sugar cookies, but those buggers are involved.
I know they are. I know they are. But you know what? You talk about core memories though, but that's the core memory. It's, you know, it's not the video game that they wanted. Maybe it is for a few minutes, but that's not the thing that lasts, you know?
Right.
I remember there was a story from that episode you talked about, like running around outside and, banging on pots and pans. Was that for New Year's?
Oh, yes. When I was a kid. Yes,
Yep.
we did that. We got pots and pans and metal spoons and things like that. We would, you know, because we wanted to celebrate, but we had to stay within our little compound.
I know, because you were in a cult, honey. I'm so sorry.
And we damn cult. We wanted to celebrate, so we'd get pots and pans and go out there and bang those things, and because we didn't have fireworks. I mean, we could have had fireworks, but that was just our way of celebrating. And I think, what did I do for New Year's this year? Oh, I did a 4.5-hour TikTok live.
What a way to spend the new year. Wow.
For New Year's Eve. And I stayed on. I started at 10 p.m. I stayed on, and I came downstairs for like 2 minutes before the ball dropped. And because I don't show my kids on social media, so I aimed my phone on a live at the screen, the TV screen, to watch the ball drop. You know, did the thing, kisses and all that things. And, the kids went to bed, and I went on with being on live for another 2.5 hours.
Oh my God.
And, you know, I've gotten to this point where, yes, it is about the children, but when your kids are young, you get lost in motherhood.
Oh, for sure.
For me, I just was so fully devoted to my kids.
Yeah.
Especially because George traveled so much for the first 7 years. And it was the
same way for me. Dave traveled a ton internationally. Oh, yeah. He was out of the country. He was out of the country more than he was in the country back in the early days. Yeah.
Felt like a single mom.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Most definitely. We talk about that all the time. Yeah.
And so as you get older and the kids get more independent, and you're like, oh, can I have me now? Is this time for me now?
Now your me time is 4-hour-long TikTok lives on New Year's Eve. I love that for you.
It was so much fun. It was, I mean, I have people that were there the majority of that time still talking about how much fun that night was.
That's great. That's great. I love that. So we kind of kept the parenthood theme going after the first of the year. And we talked about, and again, we talked about parenthood from a different angle. We talked about, in episode 11, parenthood while we're grieving, which is a really unique take on what it's like to be a mom or a dad when you're struggling with grief, because it's a quiet struggle, especially when you have younger kids. You don't necessarily want to share with them exactly, or maybe you can't even share with them what exactly is going on and why you're so sad. You know, your heart is heavy all the time, but nobody can see that part. So you kind of have to wear two different masks, and it's hard. And I know that for me, I think may be my most powerful conversation of this year, because I was dealing with that while we were recording. We just lost my mother-in-law just a couple of weeks ago, and we were really in the thick of it when we remember I recorded that episode with you from Florida, and it was like anticipatory grief was everywhere because things were not good. And, you know, trying to navigate that with my own 2 adult children who had never really lost anyone that close to them. They were very fortunate up to now. And the first loss they ever really had that was significant in their lives was their grandmother, who they're so close to. So it was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard. Yeah, it's that, to me, that was just a powerful conversation.
Yeah. And I'm grateful that your girls got to be adults in their 20s with their first major experience with grief.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they both are very well aware of the fact that it's very unusual. I mean, I remember when I found out the truth about my dad's suicide, my girls were like 10 and 13. So they were young, and I didn't tell them for the first few years because I was so completely upside down and twisted with all this grief and being a survivor all of a sudden and not knowing what to do. And I didn't share that with them right away. I didn't even know what I was dealing with. I didn't even know how to process any of it. I certainly couldn't lay it on them.
Right.
And but then when they were old enough, I felt like they were old enough. A few years later, we had the conversation, and our kids surprise us. You and I have talked a lot about that because I know your kids have surprised you, and mine have surprised me with different things that we may not think they're ready for, and then when we have the right kind of conversation, they are ready for it, and it surprises us because they're more ready than we think.
Yep, I know. My kids are 10 and 12, but have been dealing with suicide for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
They didn't know about Clayton and David in the early 2000s, so having to tell them about Corey, and then, oh, by the way, you've had 2 other uncles, that opened up a whole other can of worms that I had to share with them and try to, and with each loss, as you know, suicide loss in particular, it reopens the previous wound.
Oh, sure.
And
yeah.
So it just feels like a never-ending gaping wound that you're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, they never fully close. That's the unfortunate thing. I think they stop gushing, I guess is the best way to say it,
Right.
but they never really close. So
yeah,
that led us to episode 12, and that was Burnout after the holidays. And you and I were talking before we hit record that we feel like we're still kind of in that place right now. I loved how validating that episode was because we talked a lot about kind of that weird crash when everything ends because there's such this massive buildup from like Halloween, Thanksgiving, holidays, New Year's, and then all of a sudden it's this expectation that you just pop into the new year and you're fully engaged and fully refreshed and fully ready to go. And nobody's ready to go.
Yeah, I can't. Everybody, what's your New Year's resolution? I'm like, no.
Mm-mm.
We're done.
I love it. You
Next.
were just like, I'm not having it. Right. No, you said something. I loved what you said. I remember in this episode, you talked about instead of having a resolution, you had a word. Do you remember what your word was?
Rise.
Yes. And I think mine was impact.
Yep.
I think that's serving us well so far. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So far, so good. Now that we're like getting toward the early parts of February, which I can't believe. So, all right. So then we had episode 13, When Joy Feels Complicated. And this one kind of surprised me a little bit, the way that it resonated with me, because after trauma, joy can feel so unbelievably scary and people don't know how to approach it. And I feel like that whole episode was one just big giant validation, or at least it was for me, that joy doesn't have to be fireworks. It doesn't have to be like crazy celebration. It could just be kind of be allowing yourself to be content, even when you're sad or you've had trauma or you're grieving. And I think a lot of the feedback that we got from that episode was that people appreciated having permission to just, acknowledge that it's complicated, to be happy after you're in a bad place.
And if, and all the emotions that come along with, you're trying to live your life while you're carrying this big, heavy boulder of grief, and you laugh or you giggle or you smile and you feel that emotion, and then all of a sudden it's coupled with the guilt of it.
Yep.
And I can't tell you how many times I was at my kids' games wanting so badly to be fully engaged. And it took every fiber of my being to just be there. And I just physically being present was all that I had the energy for, especially after losing four family members in 5 months. I felt so guilty because I wanted to be excited for my children, but I physically could not do it.
And so, and you know what? That's a good reminder. I think that sometimes showing up just means just maybe physically being there in whatever way we can be. We don't necessarily have to be, have pom-poms and cheerleading, and maybe it's just sitting in the stands. Maybe you don't have the energy to be smiling and yelling and screaming and whistling, and maybe you're just there, and it needs to be that, and it needs to be okay. And that was my takeaway from that conversation, and I actually really loved that conversation. And I think my second favorite conversation was the one that we had last week that I've still been thinking a lot about, because you and I talked a lot about this offline too. And this was episode 14, and it was grieving the life that you thought you'd have. And I have gotten so many wild comments about that from people who are like, I can't believe you guys are talking about this, because I feel like I can't even acknowledge being sad over not getting the job I wanted, or, I lost a friendship, or it's not all about grief attached to losing someone. We can grieve expectations. We can grieve, like you have a list of things that maybe you thought would turn out differently. And so did I. And in your life. And it doesn't mean that you don't appreciate the life you have now. It doesn't mean that, you're not grateful. It just means that you're holding space for the stuff that didn't turn out the way you wanted, that you have the right to be sad about.
Right. Grief is not about the death of a person only. It is the complicated grieving the death of a dream, a friendship, a job, a marriage, so many different situations because it didn't pan out. Yeah, I mean, opening the conversation of grief up into a broader aspect of, oh, wow, I can actually be sad about that. I can be sad about the fact that the last 10 years felt like a waste because we moved so many times, or in your situation with your daughter moving away to Japan and having that distance for you, and not having her just right down the street from you, and how hard that has been for you.
Yeah.
That grieving the life that you dreamed about for so many years, and it's non-existent, and that's okay.
It is. And I've given myself a lot of permission lately to grieve that one thing in particular. And it's not like I ever expected my daughters to live nearby me. Like, we've always encouraged our kids, always, see the world, be part of the world, experience it every chance you get. Wherever you decide you feel like you belong is where you should be. You just never really think that they're going to take that and run all the way to Japan with it. And you figure, maybe East Coast to West Coast, or Midwest, or, who knows. But I mean, the reality is that I see my daughter twice a year, and we are such an incredibly close family unit. We talk every day, but it's different. And I've never until very recently really acknowledged the fact that I'm actually actively grieving over the fact that I can count on half a hand the amount of times I get to physically be with my child every year. And it's sad. And it really is sad. But I'm also glad that we talked about it, because that was a really helpful episode for me, because it just kind of validated things and put things in perspective for me personally. So thanks for being on the other end of the mic for that one. I appreciated that a lot.
And I got a lot out of it because, in hearing you talk about like how you go grocery shopping on the weekends with your daughter, and you go to brunch with her and her spouse and your husband, and you guys do that every single weekend. And so that opened up, the grief that I feel in the loss of the relationship with my mother, and realizing I will never have that, and I've realized that for a long time, but it doesn't change the fact when I hear about those stories, and I'm so grateful that you have those experiences, but also it brings up in me that I will never have that. And it's hard. It is really, really hard for me.
I know it is. And it is interesting though, how helpful I can only speak for myself. It's interesting to me how helpful it is when we vocalize that. I think it just kind of putting it out in the air, because there's someone who's hearing this conversation who maybe also doesn't have the relationship that they wanted to have with their child or with their parent or with a sibling. And we're out there saying, we get it. We get it. We've experienced it. We understand how that feels. It sucks. We wish it weren't that way. But then you also at the same time can acknowledge, wow, I have an amazing husband and I have 2 incredible children and I have a community of chosen friends in my life, chosen family in my life who have already proven themselves to be far more engaged and supportive and loving than most families will ever be. So there's a give and a get, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And now here we are. Now here we are 39 minutes later, recapping 3 months worth of conversations and experiences. And I just love that we've had this time, and I hope that people can take away whatever they need to take away to just feel better, to feel less alone, to feel more supported. And we're coming back. We're coming back for season 4. And you and I have talked a lot about what we want that to look like. We still want to bring in new voices, and that's a goal for us this season. You and I, between you moving and us having a family crisis in my family that took away a lot of time. I was barely home this winter. You and I are giving ourselves a little bit of grace to not have to lay everything out perfectly right from the jump in episode 1 of season 4. So we've got our plans, and we've got our episode calendar, and it's a rich one. It's an exciting one, and we're going to pop in a lot of surprises. Do you want to mention that people can find us more actively on other social media sites, or shall I? You go ahead.
I would love to. So we're actually going to be doing like live events, TikTok live, Instagram live, all the live things, and then it'll open it up for more interactive engagements, to have you guys ask us questions right there on the spot, things like that. If you've never experienced a live social media interaction, it is absolutely amazing. I highly, highly recommend. In fact, every Monday night on TikTok, I do mental health Mondays, and I pick a specific topic, and I, share my own personal experience with that. I and it's absolutely amazing. I have people that talk about it in other lives, TikTok lives. Oh my gosh, you got to come check out Natasha's Monday nights. I'd love to have you there. My handle is Natasha J. Layton on all my socials, if you ever want to check it out on Monday nights at 9:30 Eastern time.
And I'm going to say, I am really, really, really excited about doing this with you, because I have been, well, I'm creeping on your TikToks because I'm always there, and I'm always popping in. But you, in the same way that you kind of just took the mic and ran with it when we started doing this together, you did the same exact thing with your platform on TikTok, and have just created such an unbelievably safe and powerful platform where people can come and people can be vulnerable, and where you're vulnerable, and where people can find connection and community. And it is absolutely beautiful, not just what you're doing, but how you're doing it. So I'm kind of a little TikTok baby, and you and I joke about that all the time, because I have, like my 400 followers or whatever it is, and you have like 8 billion at this point.
Actually, I just hit a big milestone.
You did. You hit 10,000 followers, didn't you?
Just yesterday.
I knew it. I've been watching, and I missed it. I really had been watching and figuring it was going to be today or tomorrow or yesterday. So, and that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. And it's because you've been so consistent, and because of the content that you're creating. And so I'm excited, because when I'm on TikTok, I'm on as the HelpHUB, which is my mental health resources platform. And Natasha, you're on as you, and then you and I both share the Survivors podcast TikTok account as well. So we're going to be doing lives all over the place, all over TikTok, on all of those platforms. But we're going to start doing things differently in a way that hopefully will get more people involved in the conversation in real time. And that's the whole point. So looking ahead to season 4, I'm just excited for all of it. That's all I have to say. I'm just glad that we get to do it together. I'm glad that we get to keep surviving together, you and I and everybody else who's part of this community.
Absolutely. I am so very grateful for each and every one of you that is here and that listens, and for my dearest sweet friend, Lisa.
Well, onward to season 4. We'll see you guys next week. Keep surviving.
Have a good one.
Thanks so much for listening and for being part of the survivors community. No matter where you are in your story, you're not alone, and you're definitely not broken. Healing takes time, and it looks different for everyone. The fact that you're still here and still trying means you're already doing the hard work. If something in today's conversation resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. That's how we keep these conversations going and remind each other that there's always hope.
And if you or someone you know is struggling, please remember, help is always out there. You can call or text 988 anytime to reach a trained crisis counselor like me. And for more mental health resources, tools, treatment options, and content to support your mental health, visit the HelpHUB.co. We're so grateful you're part of the Survivors family, and we'll be back next week with another honest conversation about life after the hardest things. Until then, take care of yourself and your people, and keep surviving.